be dancing in the streets. Let me read a quick scripture for you. Let's see. This is from Genesis 4. And it says, starting in verse 3, in the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord, and Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but Cain and his offering he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. Then the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why is your face so downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. And now Cain said to his brother, let's go out to the field. While they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. And the Lord said to Cain, where is your brother? I don't know, he replied. Am I my brother's keeper? The Lord said, what have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. This is only the second major act of man in all of history. And the first act, of course, was in the garden. But the second act in history between people is that of taking a life. And for the past few weeks, we've been on a series called Taking a Life, and we've talked about several different things. I've covered a couple of different aspects, and the last time Sherry covered suicide and some testimonies from that. And but I think that one of the things is we get so used to things being a certain way in this world that it is so many different ways to take a person's life has just become acceptable. And we are appalled by some things, but then when other things happen, it just doesn't seem to be that big a deal. And those that don't seem to be that big a deal is war. I think through all of time, it's something that has just become acceptable in some ways. And of course, different people receive and accept and reject things, in different ways. We all know this. There's just so many ways to look at that, you really have to just take it as an individual. Now, I was telling Sandy before the show that I had... it's been a couple of weeks since we've done this, and I've thought about several different things, even made some notes of some things. And then I saw a movie last night. And when I was done, I had to look up and say, okay, Lord, your will be done. And it's so interesting because in this movie, I guess we're going to make this a taking a life / media moment here. This movie actually became one of my all-time favorite movies, and I just watched it last night. I had no idea when I started watching the movie that it was going to be so impactful to me, but there were so many different scenes and scenarios of taking a life in this movie. It's like the Lord was running a gamut across my understanding. And the movie is called Machine Gun Preacher, and Gerald Butler is in it. Gerald Butler is one of my favorite action stars in movies, and I love this. And even I have to be real careful on recommending this movie because each person has their own boundaries of what they'll watch in a movie or how far they'll go in a movie and that type of thing. Mine's quite a bit lower than most because I accept certain things and I use these things, no matter how good or bad they are, to help me understand things. And so I allow uh, myself to watch things in a movie that a lot of other people won't. I have to put a major red warning on watching this movie in that it has some real heavy violence part and some language, but at least 95% of more of this movie is so good and so rich in the Lord and what the Lord can do and how the Lord can use people that it really offsets that. So if you can get past the language and the violence, especially in the very first of the movie, then you'll allow it, and you'll see what I'm saying. It's about a man. It's a true story about Sam Childers, who is still alive today and has saved countless, literally, I want to say thousand, but it's countless numbers of lives in Africa and in the United States by getting people saved. He was a drug person and been in prison, and it's really rough at the first of the movie, but you have to get to know the man's life. And at the there's a part where some guy had a knife to the throat of his friend, and the main character attacked this guy and killed him, or he thought he killed him, but he took his life. But he took his life to save his friend's life. And then he got saved and actually went out and got a lot of other people to be saved too. So he actually saved a lot of lives. But then he heard the story about people in Africa and decided that he needed to go to Africa. Well, of course, layer upon layer, point after point, the man learned about what's really happening over there. And as a matter of fact, I have a little bit here. It says Sam Childers. He went to. Well, let's see. I'm sorry. His efforts to save children of South Sudan in collaboration with the Sudan People's Liberation Army against atrocities by the Lord's Resistance Army. Now, the things that you see here in that these people, this is war. So I'm kind of covering a few aspects of it here, but most of the time we think of war as you have one side and you have another side and they clashed, and you have men and or women these days and they're killing off each other. That's what war is. What's been happening in South Sudan is a war, but it is Muslim against Christian in a little different way than we understand it. But they actually steal children by killing the parents and then making warriors out of these children, and or sell them into human trafficking. And they actually, this is going to be a little graphic to you, but they actually get some of the children to kill off their own parents to make them warriors. Again, taking another aspect of taking a life that we don't conceive of, we don't think of, because we get too used to our everyday lives. But there's also scenes where they literally kill a massive amount of children and a massive amount of adults and that type of thing, where we don't have a concept of that in the United States today, or we've really never had so much of that kind of concept. But taking a life there are just so many different aspects of taking a life that one of the first things I talked about in my first sessions was that of taking one's own life, but the different ways that it's done. And sometimes it's acceptable, sometimes it's not acceptable. And so what's my point? My point is that this is just something that most of us, and I think the Lord wants us to do this, but we don't take things into account when it comes to life being there and then abruptly stopping. I mean, obviously, the greatest thing would be is for each one of us, every person in the world, to live a very fulfilling, peaceful, joyful life, especially in the Lord, and then die of old age because our body gave out and we die. That would be the greatest thing. But we're talking about taking a life, and taking a life means that life is there and then it's not. I mean, you have the general aspect. I mean, there's another way to look at taking a life, and that is diseases that kill people right now within the world. The COVID-19 aspect of things literally is taking lives. It's not abrupt like that of killing a person or suicide or somebody taking a life type thing where it's just abrupt there, but it's still taking a life. And those diseases and cancer and things like that build in a person's body is still taking a life. And so I guess my reason for even bringing this subject up and bringing it out where we're talking about it and seeing different aspects of it is to bring it to the forefront to where I believe each one of us need to spend some time with the Lord, explaining to the Lord how we feel about it, talking it out with ourselves, talking it out with other people, and realizing that from the beginning of time, I just read you Cain and Abel's story. From the beginning of time for man, there has been taking a life. And we have it in mass atrocities across the globe today in so many different aspects. But if we just stick that thought pattern, that understanding of this away, then we don't deal with it in reality. And that is, I think, my biggest point here is dealing with that in reality, because it is real. It is a part of life today. Every single one of us knows somebody that's either taken their own life or that has died in a war or has died by being murdered or some other aspect of taking a life. And how do we deal with that? How do we deal with that within ourselves? So that's kind of it for this one. I have so many different other scenarios. There's just no way that a person could talk about it in short sessions. But for right now, this is about what I've got for this individual one. So, Sandy, it's your.
Well, I just think we all may know of things where life is taken abruptly, but when we think of the situation, again, as you brought out the movie, The Machine Gun Preacher, we in our insulated in our insulated environment in the United States have no idea what it's like to face hardships like that. For faith, we think it's hard when we're banned from going into a store or a restaurant, or we're knocked off a YouTube channel or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
But that's nothing. The rest of the world, or a good part of the world, faces persecution that here we couldn't even understand. And the taking of life is part of that persecution. You know, I know for years you hear, well, so-and-so lost their life over here because they stood up for Jesus, or they didn't deny Jesus or something. And we hear that and we go on. But imagine living that, where literally a breath spoken in front of the wrong person, or somebody got wind of it, means that your children, or would be taken, or even your children influenced, where they would be forced to take a life. Those circumstances are grave, and they're things that we can't comprehend here, but yet the tide is moving in that direction.
It is. You're right.
And we need to stop thinking that our cushy lifestyle is the way it is, and stop complaining. I mean, that's why they were in the desert so long. I mean, there was so much complaining, and yet we say we don't complain, but yes, we do. We do. Mm-hmm. Because we have been so blessed that we have no idea what true hardship is.
Mm-hmm. Very true. You know, in the past year and a half, especially, but not just that time, I have always, I mean, from even back in my childhood and hearing about different things going on, like in Sudan and in other countries where there's war, and my brain wants to go to the point of, oh, well, that doesn't happen here in the United States. Could it ever happen here in the United States? All these different stories that we hear of war and different things going on. I mean, of course, we had the Civil War, but none of us remember that. But what could it happen? Yes, we are building towards that right now. We are closer to those things that we've heard about on the news and seen pictures of in the news. We are closer today to that happening in our front yard, not our backyard, our front yard today, than we ever have been in history.
It's true. It's true. Sherry.
Well, I think what you're saying is that death is a reality, that there is the reality.
Yeah.
There are various ways that we die, but one of the reality is someone can come and take our life, you know, and that is going on today for believers, you know, and I'm with you. I agree, you know, until I met someone from a country that had that going on, it was like, you know, you hear it, but it's not a reality to you until you actually meet someone whose family has lived through it, and they've attempted to take their life, and they've had to flee for their life. So there is that reality. And this may be another discussion for something else, but one of the thoughts I had when you were talking is, there's more than one way of there's another way of taking a life other than killing someone, is when they go in and they take those children and kill their family. They have taken their family life from them.
Yeah.
They have taken that part of their life from them. They haven't physically killed them, but they've actually taken their life from them. And that's another aspect of it.
Their innocence.
Yeah. They've just, you know, and they've made them something else. That was one of the big things. And I've had some friends that are Vietnam vets, and they said one of the things was they would strap bombs on the children and say, they're the Americans, run to them. And they had horrible nightmares because they'd have to shoot the kids because the kids were going to blow them up. And I mean, that's a horrible.
Oh, that's hard. That's
hard. A horrible reality.
But it is reality.
You know, I mean, just horrible stuff like war is horrible. I mean, I just, you know, we see some of the old medieval stuff and we think, You know, it's what they did to people, how they tortured people, I mean, it's just like, that's out of the pit of where. HE double hockey sticks,
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, they call it man's inhumanity to man. That's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what war is, and trying to, people trying to build their own kingdom. Why do we invade other people?
Yeah.
Why do, so like you're saying, it's a reality. And I think kind of what you're saying is what I'm getting from it is we know about it, but it's not a reality in our life. It's a reality in somebody else's life until we're upfront personal with it. And yet it says of the end time believers, they had the testimony of Yeshua, they kept his commandments, and they loved not their life unto
That's
death.
right. That's right. I watch this movie. I just cannot say it more. And it's like a 2015 movie. It's not even a brand new movie. You got to go find this movie. It's at Redbox. You can get it at Redbox. You can rent it online. But there's so many times, based on what you just said right there, there's so many times in this movie people kept asking him, but you're a white man from the United States. This is not your war. Why are you here to save these people? And it's this movie just, there's just so many times during this movie I had to stop the movie because I was weeping over how he was saving the lives of thousands of these kids. And still doing it today. The forts that he built to save people. I said, why are you doing it? This is not your war. Well, let me tell you what, if it's happening to people, it's your war. If it's lives on this planet, it's your war. Another thing, like what you were saying, there is doing drugs can kill the spirit of a person, and that's their life. There are so many aspects of talking about taking a life. And that's why I was saying there's just story after story. And I want to end it off with I used to lead praise and worship at a Spanish church in my hometown. It was about half Americans and half Spanish people, and I didn't speak Spanish, but I did the praise and worship in English, But the preacher that was there, the pastor that was there, was from Panama, and he spoke enough English that he and I could become really good friends. He was one of my dearest, wonderful, wonderful friends, even though we had to work at communicating with each other. And matter of fact, I do praise and worship, and he'd come down front while I'm doing praise and worship, and he'd start yelling, "Hallelujah, hallelujah!" He was just the most wonderful guy on the planet. And he used to make trips back and forth to Panama to preach, and they would want him to come down there. They would set up these whole things for him to preach, and he preached and got hundreds, if not thousands, of people saved in Panama. And one day he walked out the front door, and the rebels of the community gunned him down with a machine gun. And he literally stood there, raised his arms, and he just plummeted while his arms were raised. But that's why I say it's taking a life, but yet we hear stories of how people are saved from stuff like that. Why is one person saved from stuff like that, but another person has their life taken from them? The unanswered questions you just don't know. You have to ask the Lord on the day we get there, I guess, but there's just so many different aspects of taking a life. But when you experience something like that, even though I had to hear it over the phone, this happened, that makes it real. that's when it becomes real in taking a life. And so that's why I say, I'm not trying to be morbid here. I'm just saying there are realities, and then sometimes until it comes through our eyes into our understanding, we just don't get it. We just really don't get it for so many different things that happen. So anyway, that's my spiel on that for this time.
Well, we better face our realities because
I
it's
agree.
coming at us like a freight train.
I
Are we
agree.
willing
I do.
to do what's needed like your friend did? And if they come, lift our hands up and praise him.
Yep.
Go
I
out
agree.
praising him. That's
I can't.
what the Jews did when they marched him to the gas chambers. They sang the Shema.
A whole nother aspect. There you go, right there.
You know, and I don't know if that's as much as taking, but giving. Father, I give you my life. You know, you can't take from me because my life goes on. That's in a fraction of a second. You just get to change my dimension.
Very
giving
true.
my life. And how beautiful. The picture both you and Sherry just said, leaving this body, this earthly body that has so much wrong with it in general. I'm not talking us personally. The heaviness of what this body carries into eternity and doing everything we can, even if it cost us our life. We say that, but when we actually may face it one day, or would we go out with our hands lifted, praising him? I mean, I just keep picturing your friend Mark, knowing what was about to happen, knowing this was it, and just praising him all the way through. Stephen, I mean, come on, folks. We're all going to be in tears here if we don't watch it.
Yeah, let it be.
Are we willing? Are we willing to lay down our life?
Yeah.
For him, for Yeshua.
Amen.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this. Thank you for everything you guys have said and done today. I love it. And I pray people will go back and listen. And if you can handle it, watch Machine Gun Preacher and look at the reality of things that are going on in places besides the United States.
Yeah, I asked Sherry to do a Kingdom Chronicles on this guy. Sam Childers. I would love to hear her Kingdom Chronicles on this guy.
Me too. I want to hear it, Sherry. All right, guys.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.
We'll be dancing in the streets, dancing at his feet, dancing in the New Jerusalem. And we will sing Kadosh, Kadosh to the Lord of hosts, joining in the angels' choir. And forever we will be.
Do not touch that dial. Do not click off that page. We are Lamb Radio.